All right, hey guys, this is Noah Man and Del Cross B, and we are here with episode 2 of Deuce Island. So we're gonna get back into the session that I played at 50 Cent Dollar and won 2, and hopefully find some more cool spots. So I'll just get started and throw on the video.
We had initially intended to review a video of my play, but I apparently have some horrible Camtasia problems, so we'll save that for probably doing 2 in a row of my play next week.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm thinking about here. I think I was considering possibly floating him with a gutter and a pair or something like that, but that's a pretty terrible idea.
Yeah, I think that especially because he has a shorter stack, he's more likely to just be trying to jam with a hand like ace 10 or just maybe even an ace and a gut shot, but I don't see him having I don't think that you're going to have too much fold equity on later streets.
Yeah.
So I don't see any profitability, especially when his stack is such that he's probably going to jam it in on any turn card.
So I want to talk about the bottom right-hand table for a second. We've got this guy, Harry Potter, who raised under the gun with a 52 BB stack. And I've got bad aces. Do you think, given that he's fairly loose and aggressive, there's any merit to 3-betting here, even with these terrible aces? Keep in mind who the big blind is.
Right, that was what I was going to say. If we can 3-bet to isolate here, I think it is a good play because we'll be able to get the pot heads up with a pretty clear equity edge. It's not going to be huge. We can be flipping a vast amount of the time. But sometimes he can get it in with hands that are dominated. If he has an ace in his hand, he's not folding to a 3-bet. He might just stick it in. The only problem is when we have a very loose big blind who's, an 82-3, he's probably going to come along a lot. And because of that, I would rather just play the hand for set value.
Yeah.
If I knew that he was going to fold to the 3-bet, then I would go ahead and just try and get it in pre-flop. But in this case, I think that we're better off just overcalling. And possibly, we could possibly back raise 4-bet if we could get, I think that there's...
Yeah, I would definitely do that, because then I would surely be able to get it in against Harry Potter if I could back raise.
Yeah, and he might jam... you can sometimes get into a spot where, Japanese Mind might 3-bet you, and then Harry Potter will jam, and then you can put Japanese Mind into a really tough spot by 4 or 5 betting all in. And I do that with a really wide range. I will 5-bet back raise to isolate against a deeper stack with a hand that is not likely to be dominated. So I'll be doing it with my ace type hands, as well as a hand like 8, 9, 10 jack with a suit, or, something where I think that I can put him in a really tough spot when he has kings or any sort of ace king type hand.
Yeah.
And so, I think the play itself is pretty straightforward. Anyway, we just flatten. I think that's fine.
Yeah, and the other thing I should say is that here in this particular spot, I kind of think there's more value in trying to flop an ace and stacking sub-T fuse for a really, really big pot. Because he's been, from the first video and the hands that I had played beforehand, he was really, really, really loose. So I think I win a lot of money that way. And I didn't know enough about what Harry Potter was going to do in different spots to try to 3-bet. I was actually considering 3-betting small, sort of like inflate the pot a little bit and try to keep everybody along anyway to give myself like a better, to inflate the pot better for when I flop a set, and to see if Harry Potter might want to 4-bet over the top of me, but I decided against it. So here we are on the flop, and we'll continue on. Of course, I don't flop a set.
Yeah, I don't really know, but I don't think that Harry Potter is going to play too badly against a small 3-bet there. If he has a hand like ace, any sort of ace king XX type hand, I think he will mostly just flat those. I don't think that he's necessarily going to spaz 4-bet with something he shouldn't. So I don't. It wouldn't be a terrible play, but I probably wouldn't do it.
And I end up check folding pretty easy flop there. Not really anything else I can do.
Yeah, it's a very difficult flop to continue on with.
More junk over there. Should be. I think this is a fun hand with the 10-9-8-5, but this was a few weeks ago now, so I can't remember for sure. By the way, I hope everyone really likes the nice colors that I've got going on. Something about the disabling hardware acceleration made this happen, and it's a pretty sweet color scheme I've got now.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about that. I thought that was just on my end.
No.
Okay, cool.
So I think I contemplated for about half a second.
Calling?
Oh, on the bottom left-hand table, like checking the flop, because I really don't want to get check raised. But that guy's so tight that there's just no point.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. If that was a guy who had a tendency to be, check raise happy, I think that's the type of hand that I could consider checking back, because I had I had a gutter and 2 backdoor flush draws, and I think that was about it. So, it's a spot where I can turn a lot of decent hands that have equity, but as of now, I don't really have anything. So it's something to consider, but not against that dude.
You made a little bit of a tight fold in the big blind on the top left table. Do you want to jump back a couple hands, maybe?
Here?
Can you do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right here. This is a spot where, our big concern pre-flop is playing against the deep stack, but, we're not really concerned about so there's a 41 big blind limper, and then G-money raises. When we get an overcall from the deep stack, we're not closing the action, but at the same time, I'm not expecting a 57-0 to
yeah, he's not
back
raising. Nah.
So I think that, we're effectively closing the action with a hand that will flop decently well versus a 70 big blind stacked and is in position versus the 150 big blind stack. And so I think that's enough for me that I would probably want to call here.
Yeah, I think that's okay. My personal preference is definitely to just not even bother with this kind of stuff in the in the big blind. But I don't think there's no reason to necessarily throw this hand out of hand. So yeah, right. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. It's a situation where I'm not afraid of the razor stack, and I'm not, and the deep stack that I want to abuse is just overcalling. I don't really expect much from him, and it's a decent hand to be prospecting with.
Yeah.
So
I would say for those viewers at home, the big things to consider here are who the other stacks are, and what their positions are relative to you. If you've got a crazy guy behind you here, or this guy is the deep stack, that's going to be a spot where, calling with this is going to be less effective. But given the way the stacks are lined, I think it's, much more appealing to do that sort of thing with a hand that doesn't really have a ton of nut-making potential, except on that flop, of course.
Right. When you can effectively close the action, you should be, I'm more inclined to do prospecting in situations like that, where I'm effectively closing the action, and I get relatively good pot odds with a fairly reasonable hand. I can flop I can flop a lot of 2 pairs and feel okay about getting it in versus a 80 big blind stack, or I think he was a 70 big blind stack before the hand.
Yeah.
I think that he would just stick it in on a lot of boards with any sort of overpair that he has. So I think that we can make a lot of profitable calls there. It's probably thin, but I also feel like the 40 big blind stack is going to be juicing the pot often.
Yeah, well, and he's also never, ever, ever folding pre-flop.
Right, yeah.
And we've got the double-suited aces against the 85-5 guy, which is pretty exciting.
Yes.
Now we just pray somebody 3-bets and subterfuge calls.
Yeah, I think he's going to take a 3-bet to the dome, like always there too.
Yeah, if this guy had 3-bet me a couple times already, I think, so I was like, please 3-bet me again, but oh well.
Yeah. So, not a bad flop. Not a great one. What's your thoughts about, dealing with a board like this? Checking versus betting. Would you ever just check back here?
Um, Against this lineup, no, because I think Subterfuge will call me with any overpair,
Right.
including like pocket fives. So
Right.
here, I don't think I ever would. Um, I think the only way I would ever consider checking here is it, well, I guess there are certain hands, maybe certain weird equity combinations that I can't think of off the top of my head. The one thing I'm thinking of is a spot where I don't know where I stand against a particular person who's going to check raise me, that's like check raising enough where he can have air here, but I don't know if I'm necessarily confident getting my stack in.
Hmm.
And maybe if I had something on the order of a bear 5-6 that I didn't really want to call a check raise with necessarily,
Hmm.
but don't mind seeing a turn. Anything stronger than that, though, I think I would be okay bet calling at least one street on. Because it's going to be, I mean, these subterfuge, not necessarily, but Japanese mind, like, never has a 3 here. Or if he has a 3, he never has a boat. So I'm not that concerned about calling a check raise in position if I have, a 5-6-7 or an overpair and a flush draw or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, given our hand, and given that there's some draws that people can possibly have here. Heart draws are certainly in people's ranges.
Yes.
I'm not too concerned that someone has a 3. But that said, if I got check raised by a very aggressive player here, I would probably 3-bet bluff here regardless. Just because I don't really think that people are often 4-bet bluffing as a 4-bet bluffing flop like this without a 3. I think it's a little risky when our button range can contain a lot of 3s.
Yeah.
Just because we're going to be opening so wide. So with a hand like this, I would probably lean towards 3-betting like a min
3-betting,
3-bet on the flop.
say 3-betting to the size of your 3-bet bluff.
Yeah, probably just like a min 3-bet. Just because I want him to fold out. I think that, a lot of the hands that, it depends on what the player type is, certainly. A lot of
Yeah.
players are only going to 3-bet bluff with equity here. Or, I'm
Right.
sorry, check raise bluff with equity here.
Yeah.
And they're snap folding to a 3-bet. And, when we can get them to fold out a decent amount of equity
they're
for
30,
a very
40%
cheap
equity.
price.
Right.
Exactly. We want to get them to do that immediately.
Especially here because someone who had, say, say, I don't know, jacks with hearts or something like that, they have a good bit of equity against us in this particular spot. So if we could get the gold, that would be nice.
Yeah, they've got 10 outs. We're not really thrilled to, and it's very difficult for us to, bet
Call down.
and then call again and call again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not, we are kind of turning our hand into a bluff, but we're sort of, it's really for protection that we're doing it if we make a play like that.
Yeah.
If the board is, on a board like this, it's an attackable board. On a board that was more like 5-5-6, 6-6-7, those type boards, with a flush draw, it's a lot more difficult, but I would still want to make the same play just because the times that I have trips, I just want to get it in right away.
Yeah, I think when you get higher up there, though, now it's a lot easier for them to actually have the trips. So something to consider at that point.
Right. So anyway.
So I have a question for you here. How often in Japanese mind spot are you trying to bluff here?
With the really loose player in the pot, I'm probably not going to. I think that I actually represent a very strong hand better by check calling, and then when subterfuge folds, I can make a play, and if he calls, I'll just give up.
Yeah, I agree that that's a better way of doing it here, because if you think about it, subterfuge, he's really loose and he's really bad, but even he's not going to call a check like a check raise cold in
Right.
this spot with, 5-6, bear 5-6, or a bad flush draw or something like that.
Right.
He's gonna need to have a little more equity than that. So, I think here's a situation where you can sort of use the loose bad player to, help improve your range by the way you play the hand, I guess. And make a better play as a bluff later on if you want to. But really, I think in this particular spot, Japanese mind is just going to have a hard time winning the pot without a 3, period.
Right. I don't think that this is a good board for me to necessarily make a move on
Yeah.
without equity. If I had the flush draw, I would probably the ace high flush draw, I'd probably call and then represent the 3 if it doesn't come in. But without any real equity, it becomes very difficult because if a heart rolls off, if and if a 2, a 7, a 5s and 6s aren't even great.
There's a lot of
cards.
bluff catchers that can come, basically.
Yeah. So I don't want to be put in a spot where someone's going to think that my range will contain a lot of bluffs. So this is not a great board for Japanese in mind to make a move at. I would say in general.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah.
Let's keep going here. I think I just c-bet and take it down.
Yeah. A lot of discussion for a simple hand.
Yeah, that's okay. What if scenarios?
Yeah. They're what I am best at.
All right, hey, look, I flopped top 2 pair on a really dry board. I think I decided to just raise here. Yeah.
I think that is the better play. We don't really want to flat and have Montsalvat come along. We don't have, if we had 9-3, ace king or some sort of gutter to go with it,
Yeah.
we don't have any way for our hand to really improve.
Right.
And so against a lot of there's not that many hands that he can have here that can call a raise. 4, 5, 6 is somewhat of when it's a limped pot and he's trying to represent, he's not going to have that many well-connected 3-card hands compared to how many just random sort of, he completed in the small blind, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I would expect
him. Yeah.
I would expect him to mostly have something like a suited ace that flopped a gut shot and is leading it.
Yeah, or Deuce
that would be the most,
or whatever.
Yeah, maybe he has Deuce 3, but most likely I would say that he's probably just got a gut shot and doesn't want to check call, thinks he might have fold equity, and just makes an attack at the pot. I don't even think he's going to lead something like a big 9 with overcards to the 3. So, and even so, I'd much rather just raise and then react to turns.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the better way to do it, especially with, my hand being not, my hand isn't, it looks like my hand isn't particularly vulnerable, but really there are a lot of cards I don't want to see on the turn and river, so I think my hand is deceptively safe here, or unsafe.
Yeah, basically any card is not good for your hand. 4s, 5s, 6s all make straight draws.
Yeah.
7s, 8s, 10s
are hands that give people better 2 pairs a lot of the time.
Exactly. So even our ace is not necessarily good, since 4-5 is a reasonable open-ender that he could have.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking down the pot immediately in a situation like that is definitely what we should be trying to do.
I kind of think I should raise this Jack 10-9-5 here. It's kind of close, but it's still a pretty good, decently well-connected hand. I think the only thing that made me fold this was I didn't really want Japanese mind calling behind on the button. I think if I'm on the button, that's a pretty easy raise.
Yeah, I'd agree. I try to do a decent amount of isolating against short stacks just because I don't mind taking these close equity edges, the 60-40s, or even a 55% edge for their stack. If I double them up, then they're probably not a great player.
Yeah.
So
I'm fairly certain this guy is a regular, actually.
a regular short stacker?
Yeah, he plays this like 50 BB stack size a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
So here I do decide to try this against Subterfuge. I sort of min 3-bet the aces here to sort of blow up the pot a little bit, see if Harry Potter wants to do anything fun. No dice, but I flop overpair plus nut flush draw, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And everything's pretty simple from here, at least on the flop. Not really going anywhere.
Right.
Top left-hand table. Yeah, so I think this is just going to be... This should just be 3 streets of pure value against this guy. He's loose and bad. I should probably make that turn bet a little bigger, maybe $5. I don't really hate the sizing necessarily. Okay, river spot's kind of interesting. I thought about this for a while before I decided, let's go for a check raise.
Right.
So I decided to go for a check raise here, and thankfully he makes me look smart by betting.
Yeah.
What do you think here of check raising versus just leading out ourselves?
I think that I am somewhat more inclined to lead, because depending on how passive the player is, and this guy seems to be pretty passive, if he has any sort of 6-10, any jack that makes a straight, I don't know that he's going to value bet a lot of those hands. I think that he's going to check back a lot of them. I think that his range here is going to be pretty straight heavy, but I think that most of them are going to be checking back. So, I would probably rather just bet something like 12 and hope that he tries to bluff catch me. Because the times that he has a full house, it doesn't really matter. He's probably going to stick it in anyway. But, if he checks back with a straight, we look pretty foolish because we missed out on decent, pretty much assured value.
Yeah.
So
my analysis, and I think what everyone else should be thinking about here in this spot is really what is this guy going to do with a straight? Because I think, just like Kevin said, boats are going to get it in. I don't think there is not a lot of air to be had in his range at this point, by the time you get to the river here. I mean, I can't think of, given the cards that we have and the way the board pans out, there's just very, very little way he can have any sort of air that would be making a play on this river. So really, this comes down to what do you think he does with 6x with a straight, the 10 high straight and the jack high straight, really. For whatever reason, I just decided that I thought he was going to bet a straight on the river. I can't tell you why at this point I decided that. But that's what I decided to go for. And that's really, so this is sort of, thinking about what parts of his range matter and then dealing with them accordingly. And here it's just a straight. So if you think the guy's going to bet a straight, then check raise away. And if not, I definitely agree that like $12 or so to try to get value from a bluff catcher is the way to go.
Right. And, the other thing is we sort of want to think about, he does in fact snap call. What did he have there?
I think he had a straight, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, he like super, super snap called me. It'll come up in a second. I remember coming up because I was trying to figure out like what on earth did he snap call me with?
If he sometimes he'll run into a hand like nines, but again, that was a hand that we decided doesn't matter because he's going to get it in with that hand regardless. And even a lot of his 7x hands might jam over the top, particularly on a card like that where it looks like we could have run into a good straight or something. So yeah, you want to consider how many
he had the jack high. He had a jack high straight.
Wow. So yeah, his play is obviously pretty bad.
Awesome.
And the thing is, I would have expected him to at least call there. Probably, I don't expect people to bet call a straight especially given how much more it is for him to have to call. Like it was a full pot size check raise, I mean, you certainly got lucky there. It's, but it was a good read. I can't
Actually,
fault that.
well, yeah. What I think you bring up a good point there. That I want to. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Let me find that spot again. The one thing that you just mentioned that I think is really important in this spot when you're thinking about going for a check raise is, will he call the check raise? And I think that, this time I got lucky. But I think if I were to do it again, I would just bet the river because really you have to expect that that guy is A, capable of value betting a straight, and B, calling a check raise on a paired board like that I bet twice and then check the river with. That's a hell of a bluff catch at that point to, think that your straight is good and call it down. In a heads up situation, I can maybe see that being the case, but here, I mean, that's a pretty tall order to put me on a complete airball at that point. So
Yeah.
I think that's really what should have put it over the top for me to just go ahead and get the one sure bet against his straight, as opposed to being like, oh yeah, he'll totally, bet call the 20th nuts on the river.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if he has exactly Queen Jack there, that's the only straight that I would expect him to call with, thinking that he's chopping a lot of the time.
Sure.
But the fact that he's calling with Jack 7 is obviously terrible.
Yeah.
He doesn't beat anything. He beats a 6.
That's about or Ace-7.
Yeah, or Ace-7, which we aren't going to play like that at all. So, whatever. It was just a very strange hand on his part. But, sometimes the best play is not what makes you the most money. So, but in the long run, I think that just betting the river there will be more profitable.
Yeah, I agree. Quick note on the top left-hand table, I probably should not have 3-bet that hand, only because Montsalvat has like 650 in his stack at that point. So, and he had open shoved at least one of the two previous hands, so I think it's going to be, his range for getting in is going to be pretty wide, and I don't know, I'm not getting the other guy to fold ever, and right. I don't really love this spot, especially here. I'm not in love with the situation I'm in.
Right. Yeah, you're definitely going to end up having to play a bloated pot, but at least you'll be in position.
Yeah, that's true. It could be worse.
Yeah. If you're going to make a spewy play.
That is definitely true. So here, I really was torn about this for a while. I've got a pair, I've got a flush draw. The problem that I see with this spot is that it's a protected pot already. And I feel that there's a lot of times where basically my flush draw is dead. And if my flush draw is dead, I don't really have a whole lot of equity here at all. And we are, 125 BBs deep effective, and I don't really want to. I think the protected pot plus that makes this a fold at this point. If I had, obviously if I had a 7 in my hand, I think I'd be much more inclined to make the 9 or the queen a 7, and then this is a pretty easy get it in. But here, I'm happy just folding.
If I had a gut shot, I'd consider peeling. Just because it's a protected pot, I think we actually have more fold equity for the side pot. He doesn't expect us to try and bluff him out of a protected pot.
Do you think he's ever folding at this point? My thought was that once he makes this bet, he is not folding.
Well, it's not like he bet pot.
He could have bet close to it.
He bet close to it. I guess it's possible. He's still going to have a decent size stack behind, and I think that he's going to c-bet a lot of one. If he has a hand,
he's not c-betting though. He's leading into me. Remember, I 3-bet.
He's leading in. Oh, right. Yeah. I'd say this is probably closer to a fold then. I forgot about that. So.
And on this bottom left-hand table, I don't think there's really anything I can do with. Let me just go back a second. I bet here and get raised. I mean, I have a gutter, and I've got the couple over cards, but there's not a ton of cards I'm really going to like, and that guy's been playing super tight, so I'm happy just passing on that. against a different opponent, I might maybe do something different, but being out of position against a guy who doesn't raise very much, he can have it. I think part of why I agonize over this decision in the video is because I see what they end up having when they flip their cards over.
Right. You never want to look stupid.
Yeah, and he's got the good old ace 10 9 9.
Right. And we were live on both fronts.
Oh yeah, and would have taken it down.
Yeah.
So interesting play on his part, by the way, that he's going to lead there in that, not huge, well, I guess the side pot was 25 BBs, but the hand that he led there with on that board, sorry for the cough, was really, really odd. And I'm thinking with his hand, he actually would have folded to a raise. But there's just nothing I can do, I don't think, in my spot with the hand that I had.
I would have probably taken a note pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't think I did actually, but yeah, that lead that he made is definitely noteworthy.
Yeah, that is a very bizarre play for someone to make. Anytime someone does something like that, you should probably make a note of them immediately. He hasn't been doing anything too ridiculous before that, so...
No, but there was that.
I mean, he does clean up his gut shot outs, I guess. If he thinks, if he thinks that we'll ever fold a low flush, but
he didn't have a gut shot, I don't think.
It was 7. I thought the board was 7 jack. No, it was 6. Yep, he had just
all he's got is a pair of nines.
Yeah, he had a 2-outer versus any reasonable draw.
Yeah,
good for him.
Yeah,
or versus any reasonable hand.
Yeah, now I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
But no worries. Top right-hand table. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Never mind. I was gonna say that should be a raise, but there was a limper, and I have 0 fold equity against him pre-flop, so that's an easy fold on the button.
Right. And it wasn't suited, right?
No.
Ace 3-3-5.
Just an ace that's there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with tossing those hands sometimes, even when it's not when there's no limpers, just because the blinds are they don't have full stacks. There's less value to. We don't really have a lot of hit potential to our hand. There's less value in trying to move them off of a hand just because it'll be more difficult. I think your call on the flop here was a little loose with an overpair and a gut shot, not closing the action.
Yeah, I actually mentioned here I considered raising, because I think that this guy can have like a random 8, some other things, and if I can get it in against the 40 BB stack, that's nice. But with 2 people behind me, that's going to be a tall order to get the folds that I need. So I decided I'd hedge my bets by just calling here, and then as soon as this guy comes over the top, I'm like, yeah, and that's why that was a dumb idea.
I would probably rather lead the flop.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
Because then if we get called, we have equity. We beat a lot of random 8s, which are going to be hands that they're going to flat with. We can push out hands that have good equity versus us. Not in this situation, but sort of a weird spot. So yeah, I think that I would have rather led. Yeah, because it's also a lot cheaper than trying to raise or calling and folding, or even so, if we call there, we have to fold the turn on on any most turns we have to fold anyway.
Yeah.
So sort of an awkward spot.
I think he made a note that he min raised.
He did, which is when people do things like that, I don't really like min raising under the gun. I know that there's people will do it so that way they can open a wider range, but the point is to sort of pot control for the times that you get 3-bet, but because because I know they're trying to open a wider range under the gun by min raising, I just 3-bet a wider range, and then their whole plan sort of goes out the window. So And it's kind of good because the 3-bet size when it's a min raise and then I pot 3-bet is such that it usually gets folds out of a lot of the hands later to act that would certainly come along, or if they limped, for example, if they limped under the gun and then I just potted over the top of them, there's a lot
Yeah.
of hands that the cutoff and button will call that with, but
Right,
they're going to fold to the 3-bet with. So it's not a great spot. And then I'm also going to do a lot of prospecting with tens, jacks, hands like that, that they just, are going to have a lot of hit potential, but not necessarily, that I don't want to have to pay a big price to see a flop with. So
what you're saying is by min raising under the gun, you're making our lives easier.
yes. So, if I'm at your table, then raise under the gun.
At 100 big blinds deep, if I had had ace 6 5 5 double suited here, I would have considered 3-betting, but not 210 BBs deep with king 6 5 5 double suited.
Right.
Just as a what if 3-betting scenario for everybody else.
Okay. Yeah, the deeper that you get, the more we need to be very, very concerned with low pairs.
Yeah.
Not a bad spot. I don't think there's any reason to do anything. Do you flat here?
I think I raise small because raising huge doesn't do me enough good, so I want to give the other guy a chance to come over the top.
And then make that's a decent spot.
So he can, if he goes all in, Trumpy goes pretty much has to call, and then I can just stick the rest of my stack in.
Right. And the thing that I like about that play in particular is that it gives you the option of getting all in pre-flop or building a pot such that you can just get all in on the flop anyway.
Right, yes.
Regardless of who calls and who folds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of the idea here. And the other thing is, sorry for the cough again. Once I do that, Trumpy Ghost sort of knows that I have aces a lot of the time, but that's not really a big deal, I don't think, once there's that much money in the pot.
Right. And he decides to wait for a bad flop for his hand.
But he made my life pretty easy.
Yeah. I don't think that anyone who's watching this needs to be told this, but if someone called 4-bets and you have queens, you fold.
Yeah. Please fold that hand.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
now
fun.
We get another player. Which hand?
Down here on the bottom right-hand table. I'm pretty sure this is, I think this is where subterfuge gets stacked. Spoiler alert. And he calls down with something, kind of exciting. You'll also notice that I am sitting out at all of these tables because I'm done with the video, but I'm like, I really don't want to leave this table. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I want to go back. I want to talk about this hand. Yeah, because we're almost done with the video here. So I want to go back here. So let's pause for a second. We're going to talk about, I think this is a cool value betting hand to talk about. So we're going to play this hand as if we are Japanese mind in this spot. So we raise jacks on the button, I think. No, we're in middle position. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but it's not the worst thing in the world, especially because the Lee and Barbara 52 outs are super, super tight. So given that, I think this is a better play.
Right. The other thing that you should consider, I will play a lot of, I definitely adjust my pre-flop ranges according to how often I'm getting 3-bet pre-flop. If I'm never getting 3-bet, then you can play, any reasonable jacks, which, jacks with a suit and a 10 are reasonable. If you know that you're going to be able to see a cheap flop for sure just open it and then, you'll be able to c-bet a lot of boards. I think that it's definitely profitable at a table like this. There's a lot of tables where it's not, though.
Yeah, yeah. But this is one of them because when you get 3-bet, they've got aces. Or if they play anything, they have aces possibly.
Right.
So Subterfuge calls, which is what we want, obviously, and everybody else gets out of the way. Or Subterfuge 3-bet, sorry. I think the call of this 3-bet is really, really, really marginal, even against Subterfuge.
I would actually say that because it's Subterfuge, it's way worse.
Yeah. I'm just not a fan here. Like, against any normal, this is the type of hand that I'm going to fold in position to a 3-bet anyway. And there aren't many, but this is one of them.
Right.
So pre-flop, I am not a big fan of at all. Once we get to the flop, things get pretty interesting. So we bet half pot on the flop. I'm guessing that a lot of this less than half pot is just, we think Subterfuge has aces, and we're going to try to get value from aces. I'm pretty sure that was all Japanese mind is thinking here, when he bets this flop. And I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption. I might bet more, only because I don't think Subterfuge is folding on this flop for 1 bet, regardless of our bet size. Would you agree?
Yeah. I'd probably make it somewhere in the 30s, just because it's the kind of flop that I'm going to stab at pretty wide. But at the same time, I want to be able to get stacks in by the river.
Yes. That's the big thing. Since we are 100 and something, we're 180 big blinds deep with this guy, I think.
Yeah, given that he 3-bet pre-flop, we should be able to get stacks in, and I'm going to, even though there's a straight on board, as long as if an ace, king, or queen rolls off, I'm probably not happy with my hand. If an ace rolls off, I'm just immediately done. If a king or queen rolls off, I might wait to see if the board pairs.
Right, and we are in position.
Yeah.
We also have flush draw backup, so even if he does have 8-9, it's not.
Oh, that's true. Actually, we should just be trying to get it in on this flop. Then I forgot that we had the flush draw as well. When we have top set and a flush draw, even if he has 8-9, we have him crushed. We're a 60% favorite over his hand, unless he has a higher flush draw, which is unlikely.
Really rare, and he would have bet the flop with that hand anyway.
Right.
So I definitely am in favor of betting bigger on the flop here. So we get to the turn, and pretty much the same thing happens. So now, Subterfuge checks again. Not really anything else for us to do other than bet. Again, I think the bet size is a little on the small side, just a little bit. I guess relative to the size of the pot, it's okay. The problem here is that, we didn't bank the pot big enough on the flop, so we can't bet quite enough on the turn to get the stacks in on the river. And this is, the perfect example of how a small difference in your bet sizing on the flop makes a huge difference when you get to the river. Japanese mind definitely could have stacked this guy had he sized his bets a little more appropriately earlier on. But the call is fine. And then we get to the river, and nothing has really changed that much. There's no reason to think that Subterfuge has 8-9 at this point, and there aren't really that many lower straights that he could possibly have. So, let's just hope he has aces or some goofy 2-pair hand and can't fold it at all.
Yeah, if this guy backed into 4-5 and then calls the river, good for him.
Yeah.
Bravo. But the thing is, in this spot, if you miss the value bet on the river, you're really,
that's
losing a lot of value.
Yeah.
Because 8-9 will not necessarily get it in on the flop. 8-9 could play like this, play a check call
on one street.
Yeah, and then check jam the turn, because 8-9 is very weak on this flop.
Not that Subterfuge knows that necessarily, but yeah.
Right. But, any 8-9 is vulnerable to a lot of cards. 8s are bad, 9s are bad, ace, king, queen is bad, any club is bad. Also, jacks are bad, 10s are bad, 7s are bad.
Yeah.
So more than half of the deck is basically a bad card, or something like that. Maybe not, but it's very difficult to get a good turn card. It's going to be something below a 7 that is offsuit.
Right.
We get that turn.
That's 18 cards, I think. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 15 cards.
Yeah. Okay. So there's 15 blanks in the deck. Thank you, Jason. And once one of those comes off, if he doesn't check jam the turn, I mean, unless he's going for some sort of super tarp,
Yeah.
it's just
Which is a really bad idea given the way the board's playing out, by the way.
right. Yeah, you just and there's only about a pot size bet left. Don't super tarp. Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of hands that will call that are behind anyway. Any sort of like king queen nine with a flush draw is calling. Obviously, the exact hand that Japanese Mind has is calling the set and a flush draw. There's, never don't slow play this turn ever. Basically, there's too many hands that have a lot of real equity that will call, and then there's even a lot of hands that will probably call and just get it in kind of bad. Like
Yes.
a naked set will probably call here, just out of curiosity a lot of
They
the
have,
time.
and if they have any sort of backup, they definitely will.
Right. Yeah, a set. The thing is, on a board that is as connected as this, a set will usually have a gut shot.
Right.
A lot of the time, at least. So, you know, it's I think that Japanese Mind plays it well by value betting the river, but I certainly would have tried to get all in, hoping to be up against a hand like sevens or tens.
Yeah.
Because I think that those are the hands that I'm looking to that are going to bluff catch this river for sure once everything bricks off, but will probably play the same way. As it stands, the fact that Subterfuge shows up with 10-6 for middle and fourth pair is shocking. I don't
Fantastic.
know I don't know what he was hoping to beat, but
King Queen with a flush draw.
right, and that's why you have to go for value in these spots.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
just gotta blast away, because you're gonna get your value for sure.
People love to call, give them the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. I mean, and this guy's crazy. So, against more reasonable people, I think your value range on the river is going to be, Jack 10, which is tough because what we've got, but then 10s and 7s. But against a guy who's 85-4, all bets are off, no pun intended. So go ahead and fire away. The river bet in this particular hand is really what I wanted to focus on. Because, I mean, he gets, 84 BBs of value on the river. That's free money that a lot of people might not have necessarily taken advantage of on the river there. And it could have been even more. Like he missed out on 15, 20 BBs extra because he didn't do stuff right earlier. So, and these big pots making the right decision can have a huge impact on your win rate. So really don't be afraid of value betting here is the moral of the story for this particular hand.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I had some sort of big draw here and I was check 2 on the flop, I'm probably going to bet it the same way that I would bet this exact hand. And
Yeah.
I would want to size it so that by the river I could get all in. And I may or may not just jam the river with a draw. Against this guy, probably not. I would probably bet big on the flop, bet big on the turn, and then just check back the river.
Yeah.
Because clearly he's not capable of folding. And so I would be sad and think to myself, wow, I could have gotten him to fold that. I thought he had a set. And then realize, no.
He wasn't going to fold this anyway.
Yeah, thanks to Japanese Mind, I've learned that no, I wouldn't fold. He wasn't going to fold there.
Yeah.
So.
One extra question here about this hand. What, other than, say, maybe King Queen with hearts or something like that, what would you check on this flop as Japanese Mind?
If I think that I'm inclined against a player like this who 3-bets and then checks the flop. I'm inclined to check back a lot of hands because that miss, just because I think that we're going to get check called by an overpair here the vast majority of the time. And I don't know that I have the heart to fire 3 times to try and get him off aces. And I don't know if he's going to fold them, if the board is going to roll out well for my hand. So if I think that it's only going to take him if I think it's only going to take one bet to get him off of his hand, I'm just going to make that, I'm going to delayed c-bet and fire the turn instead of the flop.
So, does that change any against a reg? I meant to make that qualifier before I asked the question.
Oh, okay.
Like say random, 30-22 guy 3-bets you here. What are you checking on this flop?
That would be interesting.
Because I think I would fire here a ton against that.
Against a reg, I'm much more inclined to fire with any pair, and any. I can't think of too many hands that I wouldn't, both don't connect with his board in any substantive way. I might check back. I guess if I had just like
I said bear king queen with no other equity is the type of thing that I might check here if I had nothing else to go with it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would, but if I had that, that's the type of thing I would check back. 6 outs to the nuts plus absolutely nothing else. But other than that, I feel like I can bet, and if he folds, great, and if he check raises, well, I'm probably crushed, so whatever mild piece of equity I had wouldn't have mattered if I improved on it anyway.
Right. I think that if I get checked to on a board like this, I'm probably going to 2-barrel most of my range, and I'm going to anything that has any kind of equity. If I have a gut shot, I'm probably going to try and 2-barrel here, just because it's a very hard board for him to continue with a, if I just completely break off on the turn, like if the board pairs or I get in
board
some
pairing's
sort of
bad thing.
Yeah, but mostly my plan in a hand like this would be to 2-barrel a lot of hands that have any sort of equity, and if I had a gut shot and a backdoor, that's plenty enough for me to go crazy with. Just because I have nut outs, or I have outs to a strong hand that will beat, 1 pair or 2 pair if he has it here, because I think that it's very reasonable for him to just check call Jack 10 and then try and get it in on the turn.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think any other hand that he has that's stronger than that is just going to get it in on the flop. That's the other key. Like, there are very few people who are capable of 3-betting here and then check calling 8-9 and check raising the turn, or overpair with the nut flush draw or a set, or that a lot of people in a 3-bet pot are just going to be, okay, let's get it in.
Yeah, it's a very peculiar spot because I just don't expect to get checked to on a board like this. Maybe if I had a hand like 4, 5, 6, 7, where I just have bottom pair and a chance to improve to 2 pair, I might check back there and play some pot control, and then, say this,
See what he does
we
on
get
the
this
turn.
same turn, I'd probably call a bet on the turn and then possibly fold the river, just hoping that he's not going to fire, 2 streets with 1 pair, because most of the time I don't expect him to.
Nah.
But 4, 5, 6, 7 makes a straight, so I guess it doesn't matter. There's not that many hands that I can really see wanting to check back, unless I just had, king queen, dry king queen.
But you'd almost certainly always have a pair or something else to go with that.
Yeah,
given king queen in your hand. So it's tough to come up with pure hypotheticals here with this particular board, but hopefully everybody understands, the thought process we're going through here in terms of how we would attack this sort of spot against a reg and how it differs against the 85-5 guy.
Right. Yeah. Definitely an interesting spot.
And,
so.
Nice hand, Japanese mind. And now I'm like, oh, okay, well, if this had been a regular with 100 BB stack, I would 3-bet here, but against this guy and the situation, there's just not really a whole lot of point.
Right. There's a lot of value in 3-betting double paired hands because we gain a measure of deceptiveness with our hand. When we flop a set, people are much more likely to stick it in a 3-bet pot with 2 pair or pair and a gut shot, pair and an open ender, and just get it in absolutely crushed.
Yeah.
But mostly we want to do that in spots where they have a full stack so that they can jam over the top thinking that they have fold equity. People aren't going to people will still stick it in spots like that when it's even shallower, but we get less of we have less implied odds by bloating the pot preflop versus a short stack who's very loose and will call down anyway. So I think flatting here is fine. Against a deep stacked reg though, or a full stacked reg, definitely 3-bet.
Yeah.
And then and then we also take the initiative in the hand, and on a board like this, I expect to take it down most of the time. So
yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, that's all for this video. So we are done for episode 2. Like Kevin said, the next 2 weeks will be us going over a video of his So I'll let him drive for the next 2 weeks. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever, please post in the forums. You got any last words for this week, Kevin?
Get excited to see me getting bored and start spewing.
Spew.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for that, this is Norman and Del Crosby for DeucesCracked.com, and we'll see you guys on the forums.